We can just chat about Grimrock over Steam and text. Yeah, we can. If you don't want to get on mic, I hear you fine. Good. Alright, Bionic Commando rearmed real quick. Um, Probably like one of the best like early indie Steam games. I mean, I guess it's not really indie, is it? Because it was Capcom uh, published. I don't know what the actual developers, what happened to any of them. Because I know like the lead changed for Bionic Commando Rearmed 2. So I assume they're all dead. But this one's awesome. If we just want to chat about Grimrock, we can do it over Steam and text. If I'm dragging out the microphone, it's for the audience. Fair enough. Fair enough. I think I posted the streaming thread. It's pretty early in the day for the East Coast, or the West Coast, even. It's like noon on the East Coast. Anyway, this is a fantastic game. Great music, good mechanics. Yeah, and it's a blast to go back through it. The only bad parts are I would say well, first off, it's hard to get running now. Like you have to go through some BS. Some of the secrets are kind of annoying too. Like you have to be pretty precise with some of the platforming. But it's not that bad. I like all the little like extra equipment you can get. It's a little bit of a Metroidvania. You get new equipment things to unlock different areas like this. The hacking puzzle's not super great, but it's not super annoying either. So it's kind of an older game. I would definitely put it. I would put it above Buck Rogers, honestly. I think there's fewer people that would be interested in playing a Buck Rogers RPG than Bionic Commando. But it's older now, so I'm going to keep Unsold above that. Pretty easy. I don't think anyone else is interested in that. I don't think anyone really played Sifu, did they? Sifu's cool visually. And it's a cool idea. It's basically just a beat 'em up from an over-the-shoulder perspective. But it's got some really annoying bits that I don't think they ever fixed. Like, they patched it, but I don't think they ever fixed the really annoying parts of it. Yeah, and the structure of it's kind of annoying too, because of the way it auto saves your lowest age runs. I think it's got a lot more polish than Knight's End. And it's really satisfying when you get good at it, but it's also really annoying even after you get good at it. I definitely say it looks like Haffle's internet died, so he may not be able to make it, actually. So yeah, the big problem with this game is that uh, it's set up so that it like locks in your best run, but your best run might not be a run that you can finish the final boss on easily, which is really annoying. Because it means you basically have to do a whole separate run or make a new save file so that you can build yourself specifically for the final boss. Because he ignores all of your special abilities, and the only reliable way to beat him is to counter and have all of the bonuses to counter attacks. Really good beating up women feel though. The counters are honestly pretty tight too. Like it's almost Devil May Cry levels of like frame perfectness on the counters, or at least that's how it seemed to me. I thought there was like really bad latency, like input latency, because I kept failing the parries, but I think they're just super tight. It's definitely below Rearmed. Rearmed's almost perfect. But I think it's above Buck Rogers. Because again, I think more people would be interested in this than in Buck Rogers. Sifu. I thought somebody might want to talk about Baba Is You. What's up, Brosif? Nobody else played... Oh, no, that's not true. Justinian played Procession to Cavalry, right? I'll do Nomad Survival. Because the only person who'd want to talk about that is Calixtus, and I don't want him... I don't want him talking about it. Or actually, before I do that, I'll do Vampire Survivors. Yeah, I did Vampire Survivors way earlier. Vampire Survivors is the podcast game. You put on something to listen to. It's also, like, terrible on encoding. Because there's so many, like, pixelated numbers and stuff popping up. It just kills encoders, so it's a pain to stream, it's a pain to record. All of these files were like 8 gigs that I'm showing off here, and it's probably going to ruin this stream, even though it's like shrunk down into a tiny box now. I got the DLC that just came out, and it's okay. The main thing is just that they priced this right, and they managed to ride a wave without ruining it, which is pretty impressive. Like, most things like this, they would immediately be like, oh, we're gonna do Vampire Survivors in 3D, and everyone would be super excited, and then it would be garbage. But they stayed pretty true to what people actually liked about it, which was mindlessly walking back and forth collecting gems as stuff dies. So that's good, at least. It's not like a super thrilling game or even that difficult once you unlock enough stuff. So where would it go? I think it's above this Starry Midnight remake because it's got a similar problem where you're not really doing much. But I think you do more in this than you do in Midnight. Scoutfold. Scoutfold's alright, but I want to play it less than this. Buck Rogers, I think, is the stopping point, though. I just, there's more going on in Buck Rogers, even though a lot of it is unbalanced and annoying. I'm trying to think of any good points about Vampire Survivors to put it over Buck Rogers. Well, this isn't right. Oh, I haven't been killing that each time I've got... I just never looped over it. Anyway, yeah, I think I'm gonna keep Buck Rogers over Vampire Survivors. Because I don't think everyone has to play Vampire Survivors. Most people probably have already. I think I'd recommend checking out Buck Rogers. Over it, if you haven't. And now that that's on there, I can go to Nomad Survival. Nomad Survival is Vampire Survivors, but with a less clean look, but actually more interesting gameplay. And one thing I really like about it is it's got an options menu when you set up a run, and you can tweak a lot of the like damage values, like damage multipliers, even your speed and enemy speed, and do stuff like give all enemies the ability to shoot projectiles. So you can turn it into a really crazy, like, intense round if you want. And you can get even more broken combinations of stuff than Vampire Survivors. It's potentially a lot more frustrating, and it doesn't look as good. But I think it looks alright. Some of the effects are pretty bad, though. Let's see. Obviously, the comparison point is with Vampire Survivors. And I'm 100% sure this is just derivative of that. And it's derivative in a good way. But, you know, this is the kind of thing that you would, you know, see maybe a couple years after something like Vampire Survivors comes out. And the fact that it came out the same year does kind of hurt it, because it does feel like they're just kind of jumping onto a bandwagon. It's similarly hard on encoding. I think this is still better than Scoutfold, though. Or Night's End, anyway. Not Scoutfold as a series. Yeah, I almost want to put it above Vampire Survivors just because it's actually more fun to play now. Vampire Survivors, the problem is you get to a point where you either opt not to get weapon evolutions, in which case you probably die, or you don't, and you probably make it to 30 minutes and win. And that's that's basically your only options. Because like any weapon evolution you get in Vampire Survivors is pretty powerful. And this, like, some of the maps are really, really tough. The new DLC maps for Vampire Survivors are more complicated, like almost on the level of this. But in the that's one case where Vampire Survivors was behind the curve on this, because this has some maps with actual layout and like events and triggers on it. So I would say it's got that over Vampire Survivors for sure. Because even the most complicated non-DLC Vampire Survivors map is pretty bland. And just to irritate people, I think it's worth putting it over. Nomad Survival. I'm gonna do Ghost Song too. Haffel's still struggling with his internet. Ghost Song kind of sucks. It's just not very interesting, and there's too much talking. I don't like the character designs as much as Starry Midnight. I kind of would rather play Yooka-Laylee, even. Blob Quest was free. Yeah, this feels more like something around Flynn or Transit Ruby. I think it's better than Flynn because it's not completely boring. Vomitorium. Vomitorium's definitely a lot funnier. But I think I enjoyed myself playing this more than Vomitorium. And same with Crypt Stalker, honestly. I think I'm gonna stop it at Blob Quest, because Blob Quest is just a little free thing you can download and have fun with. Yeah, I just don't have much to say about Ghost Song. It's fine, but it kind of drags its feet. Haffle returns. I think the more of this I get out of the way, the better it'll be for determining the actual like when people actually do start putting stuff on the list. I mean, Haffle, I'm assuming you can't even see the stream properly. since you keep popping in and out, so. I mean, it was working yesterday, right? Hammer Fight's really cool. Hammer Fight is another game that, I'd say like Sifu. There's a lot of, internet keeps dying. Oh no. It's the Putin price hike. It's fine, we can do it later. It's my entire connection. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, we can do Grimrock maybe later tonight or tomorrow. I'm not in a huge rush to get through everything, especially the things that people want to actually talk about. I'm just rushing through all the ones that I don't think anybody has anything to say. Except for me. And I kind of want to get done with the whole thing by the end of the year, but that's still a ways off. So anyway, Hammer Fight, I think like Sifu, is really technical, really satisfying, and really, really irritating when things don't work out the way you expect. It's a cooler idea for a game than Sifu. Like, Sifu's really just a beat 'em up, and this has a little bit more going on. Not all of it is better. The hammer ball thing is pretty dumb. Some of the bosses are really annoying, but overall I'd say it's a lot more interesting, but it's not nearly as good of a total package as Bionic Commando. Let's see. Midnight Protocol. Midnight Protocol was one that I convinced Sheslop to get, and he hated it, which is probably part of the reason why he unfriended me. Oh, you know what? I think I'll do Tunic. I don't think anyone really played that, and it kind of irritated me. So Tunic's got this whole thing where, like, there's a meta layer to it of puzzles that you solve. And then there's the actual combat, and the actual combat's pretty miserable and not fun. Like, it's not really buggy, but it doesn't feel good at all. And there's a lot of reasons for it not working out. But it really drags the whole thing down if you're looking for the puzzle element of it. And honestly, I didn't find the puzzle element of it that interesting. At first, it's pretty good. But it just keeps going the same way. Like, it reuses the same, like, puzzle idea over and over and over, and then there's no reward for a lot of it, or no real reward. Like, some of it is you get like extra stats or whatever, and some of it you actually get like other weapons and stuff like that. But the other weapons aren't very good to use. And the whole thing just kind of winds up dragging itself down. It's a lot of really cool ideas, but not executed very well at all. I think it's more interesting than Transit Ruby. And I'd put it over Flynn too, actually, because I think some people might really get into the puzzles in this, but I don't think anyone's really gonna get into Flynn. And this is more overpriced than Vomitorium, which was a big reason why I put Vomitorium where it is. So I'm gonna put it under Vomitorium, actually. Because I think this is... How much is this now? Tunic. Yeah, Tunic's $30 at full price. Vomitorium's only 10. And there's less game in Vomitorium, but what's the sexy mouse with sword? That's your father, I think. I think that ends up being your father. Or something like that. It's like a bigger mouse. Or maybe your mother. I don't remember. And you get the secret ending by finding all of the pages of the game's manual and giving the manual to the final boss. Which makes the final boss cry. And then it becomes a real person again. And it turns out it's your dad, I think. Or maybe it's your mom and she goes away and brings your dad back to life. I don't remember. It wasn't very... This is one of those emotional endings that didn't land. Because I didn't care about anything or anyone in it. Flashback. You played Flashback, right, Apple? Flashback's one of those classic games. I played it literally in the last century. Flashback's one of those classic games that is really cool, and was so ahead of its time that it's unplayable, basically. It's not really unplayable, but there's just a lot of things about it that are miserable and don't work well. And I played a really bad PC port of it that is even more broken. Like right there, that's the final gauntlet. You have like a timer to escape the planet, and you can cheese it with the teleporter item, but you don't have to in this version because the timer doesn't work. I never played the sequel to this. And I didn't play the remake of it with the like obnoxious voice acting and free aim, analog stick free aim, which is another thing that Metroid Dread had. Where did I put Metroid? Oh wow. Yeah, I really didn't like that, huh? I think this is better than Dread for sure. Fade to Black, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard similar things about it. I've always meant to check it out, just, you know, in the hopes that it would be at least interesting. But I never got around to it. I've like booted it up before, but never actually played through it. Even still, just the style and good parts of how it feels, I think, are worth quite a bit. I love the animation. I even love the goofy cutscenes. How chubby he looks in that one. 5 out of 10. Yeah. Some bits of these cutscenes are cut content that was re-added to this port. Like that whole scene of them boarding the ship and it taking off. And I think this bit of it landing in the bay, I think in the original like Genesis and Super Nintendo versions, you only saw the bigger ship, which was at least kind of cool of this port, is being able to see those sorts of things. Same magazine gave Flashback 9 out of 10. Well, yeah, but it was a couple years later too, right? Or was it only like 1 year? Now, I don't know if I should rank this based on this port, because I do think the port does some annoying things. Like, obviously, like, the countdown timer's broken and stuff like that. The music seems to be messed up. It's got a lot of similar problems to Buck Rogers, where just the balance is off in a way that kind of ruins the game. At least for, like, multiple playthroughs. It's tough to say which I prefer more, because I really like the story stuff and the characters in Buck Rogers. And obviously, like, the freedom you have to fly around the solar system. But this has a lot better, like... It's mostly just the animations in this, honestly. I think I put it below Buck Rogers then. Because Buck Rogers has the really cool, like, full screen visuals. And I just care more about what's going on in Buck Rogers. It's a cooler setting. It seems like your internet's mostly stabilized, Halfway. You want to give it a shot, or...? I love this intro cutscene so much. It's got great music too, actually. Hang on. Hang on. This song's awesome. Sick drop. All right, let me call you up, and let's see if it'll work. Haffle? Is this Haffle? Don't forget to mute this stream, by the way. I don't think your mic's working.
Sorry, I have press to talk working, so
Okay.
didn't notice it was in Steam.
Well, here we are. Legend of Grimrock 2. You're currently playing through Lost City, as am I.
Yeah, I just started it and Lost City seems pretty good. The mod I tried previous wasn't as good.
Yeah, I had a similar experience where I was like, oh, some of these user generated stuff looks pretty good. I'll start with the really small ones. The ones that are like, oh, it takes your party to level 8 or whatever. Or it's like 5 maps. I'm like, I'll knock some of these out and see how they are. And they were all terrible.
Yeah, I think the problem with the small mods is that there just not enough progress in them for the RPG elements, even though the RPG elements in Grimrock are pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're better than in the first game. I don't know if you played the first game much.
I played the first game, the second is definitely better in every respect.
Yeah, yeah. The first game's really cool because it's obviously like a new, a modern revival of a genre that completely died out. I think. But
Yeah, it's like it's the first good real-time dungeon crawler in the maybe 21st century. So
yeah, like, and there have been some really bad ones too. So it makes you really appreciate the Grimrock games.
yeah, I have to compare Grimrock to Dungeon Master because it's still the best one of all of them.
Well, it's
Even
also
mechanically.
basically just the same game, like
Yeah,
especially the first one.
the first one is the same game. You have a party, you have a dungeon, get through it.
Yeah, yeah,
And the second one too, it expands to open world basically, to outdoors.
which the second Dungeon Master game did, right?
Yeah, the second Dungeon Master did that, and I played it this year, and it was interesting, but the improvements actually worked against the game. Like the enemies were too smart and so on. Like attack magic is completely useless because the enemies actually dodge it and so on.
Yeah, this kind of has a similar thing going on where uh, you really notice it going either back to Grimrock 1 from this or when you have replayed both of them. One thing that really sticks out to me having done that is that like the early enemies in Grimrock 2 are just a little trickier as far as the whole combat dance goes. Like you have the twig roots, the little guys made out of wood that do
Yeah,
like a cartwheel to the side.
yeah, the cartridge. Yeah, I think that's really the problem with the Grimrock 2 combat. It's like it expects you. It's not really square dancing because it's in between squares. Is where the combat is. You
Yeah.
have to start attacking while you're moving into the square because otherwise the enemy will counter attack or just move away.
Yeah, and it it doesn't really get super complicated ever, but it starts a lot more complicated than the first game did. Like the first game, the first enemies you fight are the snails, which are like they literally just slide forward and turn occasionally, which is the basis of all the combat in these games. But like in Grimrock 2, you have like these guys. Well, almost, a lot of the enemies can like turn and move in the same motion, and you take
Yeah,
damage instantly.
that's the issue. Like in the Lost City, when I was trying to get past the troll we talked about a bit earlier today,
Yeah,
he just does the move. I immediately turns and kills one of your characters,
yeah,
and that's like you can never like be next to it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you just as soon as he moves into the tile adjacent to you, you attack and move, and as long as you have a 2x2 square, you can do that infinitely. And all of the stuff that you can do that's more complicated than that, it's like you can freeze them and get behind them and backstab them, but it's all just like you might not be able to do that unless you have a 2x2 or more than a 2x2, I guess. You can't backstab them.
Yeah, again, I have to compare it to Dungeon Master, and that was the only one dungeon crawler in real time that has a stamina system, and it works there because you can just move like an idiot constantly because just you get tired and slow and so on. There's
Well,
like
technically, this has a stamina system. I think all of the weapons actually take some of your energy to use. It's
but
just that every character regenerates energy faster than they can swing their weapon.
but but energy in Grimrock is mana, not like stamina like to just move around, fatigue in Daggerfall and so on.
Right. Yeah, it never
Yeah,
actually slows you down unless you get a leg wound. Or it's
yeah,
actually
like
foot injury. Foot injury is the slowing.
yeah, like in Dungeon Master, if you're like under 50% stamina, your carrying capacity goes down, you can get into yellow encumbrance and you're immediately slow and can't really even run away. You have to keep your stamina up.
Well,
It's the same pace of combat really as in Grimrock, but instead of waiting for the enemy to move around and so on so you can hit them while they move into the square, you're waiting for the stamina to regenerate and you're basically chugging stamina potions in combat constantly.
so it's exactly like Morrowind, which makes it the best RPG of all time.
Yeah, it even has the Elder Scrolls learn by doing skills
Oh,
instead
that's
of
right. I forgot about that. Where you like grind up the spell schools by doing like cantrips, basically.
yeah, and the magic it is there is really better than Grimrock because there's the separate power stat for the spell. Like you can cast every spell like at like 6 power levels, so
Yeah.
they scale it through the entire game. There's nothing that really becomes useless.
Well, that reminds me of the other best RPG of all time, which is Grimoire, which also let you cast spells on multiple die.
Yeah, but that was like there wasn't enough or too much. It was too long for it to matter the scale until the very end.
Yeah.
But then Dungeon Master has like 3 attack spells, 4 attack spells. So and all of them except like the poisoned bolt are useful until the end.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one big disappointment with Grimrock is just that the magic does not scale well. So you almost always need a spellcaster just so that you can cast light, basically. But they end up feeling more and more useless in combat as you get further into the game.
Yeah, it's like spellcasters in Dungeon Master aren't that strong in the end to direct damage either because the best spell is the poison cloud and enemies are smart enough to move away from it, so it's usually just for covering your retreat and so on. But you don't have to like pick and choose your spells. You can cast every spell, so there's not like, oh no, I specced into the wrong school, so no, the spellcaster is even more useless.
Yeah.
Even if you don't do direct damage, you can still cast like invisibility, or that's actually useful. Darkness, that's also useful because it's like cheap invisibility.
Right.
There's like even a really cool spell that just makes your footsteps show in the dungeon. So if you walk into a teleport and so on, you can you can see it because of you have magic footsteps. It's like
Yeah, that
pretty good utility.
yeah. There's less of that sort of thing, I think, in Grimrock, just because even though you can turn off the map, they really expect you to have the map. Even most of the user generated content, nobody really expects you to go old school on it.
My first time I played it old school, and it's like it was really cool, but the the biggest dungeon innovation in the like the level design in Grimrock is that there's the multiple levels in one level.
Yeah,
Like, and
multiple
that's really hard.
floors. Yeah.
Yeah, multiple floors, and that's hard to do on paper map. I like to use crayons and so on to differentiate the levels.
Well, and the other fun thing is when you have stuff like the meditation spire, which I don't know if you ever actually solved that puzzle, but it's a room in one of the dungeons with like a three-tiered thing that you climb up, and at the very top it's just one tile, and if you just sleep there for like a couple hours, it silently teleports you to an almost identical looking room on a different floor. And
I
the only way you could tell that it changed was you look at your map and you're like, "Oh, I haven't explored outside of this room. I'm on a different
or
floor."
or if you like put something on the floors, like just as a marker.
Right. Right, but you
Yeah,
wouldn't know to do that, I think.
yeah, that's like another thing that Dungeon Master. There was a spell to just conjure a rock to you could put on the floor, and if you had the magic map, it would show on the magic map. So like that was a cool thing that just helped with exploring.
It's
Like
in, it's interesting
Grimmer
thinking about that cuz that reminds me of like in all the Souls games they have like the Prism Stone items.
but that's like did anyone really ever use it for things like checking if they can fall from somewhere or maybe in the crystal cave to check the floor?
Right, right. But that's it. But the item itself is, I think, a holdover from like those old RPGs where you would like potentially get lost and have to like actually mark out on the floor with dropped items.
Yeah, something like that. It's in Chaos Strikes Back, where right at the start there's like a four-way crossroads that leads to the four main branches of the dungeon. But there's also another completely identical crossroads like that you can end up in. So you need to mark your way there. So the Chaos Strikes Back is basically the ultimate dungeon crawl because it's like it removes the idea of a really a dungeon level as a self-contained thing,
Yeah.
and it's like just one big 8 floor dungeon.
Yeah, which which is my biggest problem with Grimrock 1, which is that it's just a dungeon crawl and it just ends up being kind of exhausting cuz you just keep going deeper.
It's just a dungeon crawl, and the floors usually there are their own thing.
Yeah.
They're usually often not really connected.
Yeah, there's like a handful of secrets that you like go up to an earlier floor, like through a secret stairwell or something, and that's it. And
Remember,
I guess some items you carry from one floor to another, but not many.
it's like when it moved from Dungeon Master 2, it was the move to open areas that was the interesting thing, and Grimrock 2 did it much better because like it's like a little bit non-linear since you can go clear the different areas in any order if you can handle it.
Yeah. Well, and
And
I think the areas themselves are like handled pretty well because they are kind of self-contained, but not entirely. And so you can kind of poke your head into an area that's like potentially really dangerous, like the cemetery. Once you get access to it. And
Yeah,
then
it's like
once you take a lot of damage or find something really interesting that you think will help you somewhere else, you can bail on it and go somewhere else.
yeah, your progress isn't really gated by some arbitrary order you have to do these things in.
Yeah.
You can just pick and choose, except like the entrance to the pyramid, which is like the I think the most difficult mandatory puzzle in the game, really.
The serpent rod.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a,
I remember that one took me a long time on my first playthrough just because it was one of those items that I saw and was like, oh, whatever, and I threw it in a corner somewhere and forgot about it.
yeah, pretty much. Because you get it with one time, and then takes forever until you need it.
And of course, that now that experience has made all of the uh, fan made or player content a lot more annoying because I'm so conscious of that potentially happening that now you have to very precisely stash every single object no matter how useless seeming it is,
Yeah,
just in
to
case they
restore.
set up a trigger that this door only opens if you put this item on a shelf.
Think it. That's the advantage of the more self-contained floors, where you just
Right.
everything you need is usually on the floor, unless it's something like a key or like a big secret.
Right. Or like your giant chest full of food that you'll never eat.
Yeah, I think the food in Grimrock is sort of like not that important.
It's
I
pretty
think the
vestigial in the vanilla game. Some of the overhauls definitely flesh it out more, but
yeah, like it's vestigial in pretty much every dungeon crawler. Like the only one I think it was really mattered was Chaos Strikes Back, because you're start naked in the middle of a tough dungeon
which
and you can't easily backtrack.
which one of the Dungeon Master games had the apples that weighed like 10 fucking pounds each?
I'm not sure. I don't think they weigh normal amount, but like
It
you could farm. Oh yeah, the palm apples in Dungeon Master 2 that
yeah.
like grew in the wilderness.
Yeah, and I think you could sell them for a decent amount too. So you would like go out and grab a bunch of them and haul them back to the dwarves and try and sell them.
Yeah, they sold for decent amount, and I think they boosted their fighter level temporarily, but the fighter level isn't all that important.
I didn't know that.
Like the fighter level is important because of the stats it gives on the level up, not because of what it lets you do.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it gates anything. Um but
Well,
yeah,
no, like in Dungeon Master, a few of the weapon moves are gated, but like by the time you reach like the fifth level in a class that's you do in the first few floors, you can do pretty much every attack with every weapon.
yeah, I don't think I ever got to like I don't remember getting a weapon and not being able to use it.
Yeah, that Dungeon Master had the click through menu that you clicked on the weapon and you had to pick the move you want to use.
Yeah,
Some of those
I remember that, but it was like kind of obscure like what the difference even was. So I don't think I ever messed with that much. Unless
us-
one was completely useless and I would never use it.
yeah, yeah, like the best moves are usually at the bottom and they usually require a little bit of experience to use, but really by the fourth floor in the basic game you usually have the all the experience you need to do everything.
Yeah, but it always feels bad in an RPG to have something cost experience.
Yeah, but yeah, it doesn't cost like to do, but you need it. You need to reach a certain level before you can use
Yeah,
the move.
yeah. It's basically like it's basically like a prestige thing. Like you've gotten to as high a level as matters, and so you might as well just burn your XP It's sort of like games where you can use money as a ammo or a ability. Where at a certain point you just run out of shit to buy, so you're just throwing gold at people.
Yeah, I guess you can do that in Dungeon Master too.
Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, you could probably open your money box and just chuck copper pieces at enemies, like, really fast.
That
Not
is
sure how.
that is something that you can also do in this. You can throw items because it is one of those games with the quote unquote fifth party member, which is your disembodied hand.
The thing was in Dungeon Master that you actually picked to each character did manipulate the thing. So
Right. They did. Dungeon Master didn't have a fifth party member, but this does. You can
in
you
Dungeon
can
Master it
you
was
can
cool because
telekinetically carry around a crate full of whatever you want, and it doesn't burden anybody.
Dungeon Master it burdened the character you picked, and it actually changed the throw distance. So, like, if you try to use your wizard to throw stuff, they wouldn't throw it as far, and so on.
Yeah.
Like, it was
Didn't
neat, but really useless in the end.
did the wizards have a spell or something that let them throw things further? Or am I thinking of some other game?
I don't remember that. I know the Dungeon Master 2 had the mini on map that you could use to, like, summon a green flying blob to, like,
Yeah.
hoover up items.
Yeah. I think that might have been something that I was thinking of. But yeah, the fifth party member in this is kind of weird because, like, I think that's the intended way to use bombs. Because all the throwing weapons in this, like, obviously you have to put it in somebody's hand, and you know they apply their throwing stat to the damage and their strength. But bombs aren't affected by any of that, and you can still put them in someone's hand and have them throw it, but it puts them in cooldown. But it's the same exact effect if you throw it.
Yeah, I never really used bombs myself because the first playthrough I had 2 characters and just didn't have the time in combat to really do it because I was really trying to survive, and I didn't need with 4 because the game is pretty easy on normal.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll shift over into the actual mod that I played here a little bit because you haven't played it yet.
Yeah, I haven't played it, but I have opinions on it based on what you said. So
Okay, what do you think? What do you think about it?
I think the basic system of magic in Grimrock is so bad you can't really fix it. So, like, trying to fix it is like a fool's errand. Maybe like giving every school spells that are useful is good, but not enough to like make it worthwhile, I think.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you. I think they didn't go far enough to actually fix the magic. They just made the magic more central to the gameplay, which isn't necessarily good.
Yeah, like the things again, Dungeon Master things that make it work is that you can select the level of the spell, so everything is useful throughout the game, and that you can use advanced spell at lower effect. So if you figure out the spell by experimentation, you can use it from the start, but you usually just don't have the skill to use it, but you can still use it to train and so on.
Right. And then in Magic of Grimrock, like they tried to do something like that, like have higher skill, like more skill investment into magic school, like make it scale more over the course of the late game. But the problem is the way it does it is for the most part, like obviously there's some damage scaling, but the main thing is projectile spells have a chance to multicast based on your skill with that element. And the problem is it works completely randomly, and it's a lot like in Grimrock 1 how all of the like bash and cleave skills were just random things that would happen if you had a high enough skill.
Yeah, I think like those special weapon skills in Grimrock are actually really good because it's so Dungeon Master has the multiple skills per weapon, but it adds the extra click in combat.
Right.
Every dungeon crawler after it had just had click to attack. Nothing
Right.
special. Every weapon was the same. And Grimrock actually solves it by like making the combat fast because you can just click to attack, but you have the option of those special moves. And that's
Right.
like I think the best thing Grimrock does mechanically.
Uh yeah, probably. Like as far as like innovating on the core mechanics, I think that is a good move. Some of them are still pretty underwhelming, and uh, the high energy cost on some of them is kind of annoying because you're only ever going to be using them with front row fighters who probably don't have a lot invested in energy. So you get
Yeah,
like one bash per combat.
I think like making them not cost energy but like have significantly longer cooldown or something like that could probably help.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that probably could be modded or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many different overhauls where, like, almost every major mod for Grimrock 2 attempts to change some of the core mechanics in some way. Uh, but I don't think any of them have completely nailed it.
I think you can't really fix it completely because just the base it's built on isn't good enough, but like it's possible to improve it, and I think that's why people are trying.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it makes it more interesting to play through because it's sort of like one of the main things that makes like individual games or like new games interesting is learning like all of the nuances of the combat or the mechanics, right? And so
Yeah,
if you're
and if
slightly
you
altering it with each mod, which almost all of them are, then it makes them all kind of like a new game.
you have you're familiar with the basics, but there's still like new things to master.
Right. Yeah. So I think Grimrock 2, the base game, is really, really good and a great homage to the old genre that, you know, Dungeon Master obviously innovated. Um, and it's not perfect, but I think where it really shines possibly is as a base for that sort of thing, like building on it.
Like I think you're basically it's great as a base, and I think that like it's the best dungeon crawler since like Chaos Strikes Back, right? So the direct sequel to Dungeon Master.
Right.
Yeah, clearly, oh, the Eye of the Beholder, Lens of Lore, and so on. They're not as good as this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think most people that played this would agree. Like, I don't think it's a how would I put this? I don't think it's super subjective that Grimrock 2 especially is like really high quality for this genre.
Yeah, I keep seeing people say Lens of Lore was really good when I think it was really mediocre and so on. So I really have to stress that Grimrock is really that good and better than most of the games people think are classics.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of really good effort went into this. That's kind of surprising because they're what, Finnish? Just like some random Finnish studio. I don't think they really did anything before Grimrock, and the only thing they've done since in like a separate studio even is Druidstone.
Yeah, but Droidstone was really good too, and it's like Droidstone is also a game that's really good, but I don't think it's all that replayable. So
Yeah,
like Grimrock, the base game, once you solve all the puzzles.
kind of, yeah. But there's no user maps for Druidstone, at least as far as I know.
Yeah, Druidstone is cool, and I guess the devs made it because they didn't want to like get stuck doing dungeon crawlers. But the lack of like ability to make new maps hurts it. I think, though I think there's support for it, but I'm not sure. I haven't checked since the game came out.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't looked, but I'm kind of assuming, as I've not heard of any of it. Um, and yeah, Druidstone's cool. I really liked it. I had one big major beef with it, which is that the whole structure of it is kind of arranged around being really discrete and not having a lot of randomized elements. And then there's still a handful of pseudo random things that you can't predict ahead of time that can throw off a map.
Yeah, I mostly remember the random things being positive, but yeah, I can see how that be an annoyance if like the one bad thing that then happens and it throws the entire plan off, and the game doesn't have enough room for error.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the two main ones are the random items that you get from chests, which can be a huge deal if, like, one run you get the skull that does 2 damage to everything on the map, and the other run you get like an antidote or something on a map where you're not even gonna get poisoned, right?
Yeah, and the other are the books, I think, like into late game, or are those always bad?
I don't remember. The other random element that I was thinking of was the enemies dropping like hearts to heal you and stuff like that, and extra action points, which you might not have realized playing through it, but enemies can pick those up as well. So if you like kill, and the hearts also heal poison. So if you're trying to kill an enemy with poison and you kill another enemy that drops a heart and you don't have enough like moves left in that turn to steal that heart, the enemy can walk over and cure its own poison.
Yeah, like the random elements are pretty bad in a game that really is as requires as tight planning and execution as Dreadstone.
Right. And I remember I said that when I played it, and some super fan of Druidstone was like arguing that there is no random elements because they're all pseudo random, which means if you do the same actions in the same orders each time, then the pseudo random events will occur the same way. But that's not. It's still random enough as far as the player's perspective. Nobody's playing through the game several hundred times like working out a task.
Yeah, like it's technically not random, but it's unpredictable and you can't really plan for it.
Yeah. But getting back to this particular playthrough, the one thing that really annoyed me about was the level scaling on enemies. So you see how fast these mosquitoes melt my party? That's because those mosquitoes are level scaled. Their health and damage is scaled to my party's level. And but their speed and their AI is unaltered, which, as you might imagine, can be a problem with some enemy types.
Like level scaling in Grimrock seems like really bad because it's like a game where you're progressing deeper and deeper into something. So the danger should increase from reaching more dangerous places, not reaching an arbitrary level.
It,
Because you can't really go back and grind anyway, so the level scaling has not really much purpose.
Well, and it also it's kind of like the pseudo random elements in Druidstone where it kind of ruins what makes the enemies interesting in the core game, which is that they're all kind of um, they're kind of a distinct level of danger. Like if you throw a troll into an early part of a custom map, like that's a serious threat that you have to like contain and work around. But if the troll was level scaled, like what's the point?
Yeah, and even if the enemies had like a minimum power that they that they were always at and only started scaling after the party surpassed them, then it's still a problem because like it's not, probably people don't like it, but the idea of an open world game is partially that if something's like too tough for you, you can go away and try something else. But
Right.
if everything level scales, it doesn't really change. Everything's theoretically stays always at the same level, so you can just, so it's easier to just bash your head against the wall because you can't really get an advantage you know about by going somewhere else.
Or even worse, there's some slippage between the character level and the level scaling to where things get way more annoying as you get stronger, or completely trivial anyway, even if they
Oh
should
yeah,
be dangerous.
that happens in Wizardry 8, where you eventually start encountering more spellcasters,
Yeah.
and those are just pain to fight, even if you're really above their level.
Yeah. And in this, the one good part of the level scaling is it makes most of the bosses are still pretty easy, but the Lindworm, the guy riding the dragon, like that takes a full in-game day, and I was pretty well kitted out. But the sun literally set and started coming up by the time I killed that thing.
Uh, I think that happened to me on my first playthrough when I was having just two characters and so much fewer actions than a third party would have.
Right, especially since the Lindworm can like attack in an AoE around itself.
Yeah, I actually liked the bosses a lot when I was playing with only two characters. They were like pretty challenging and required me like to do everything, constantly being aware of everything. There wasn't really a moment I could like take a breather because everyone was both the characters were constantly dying and I was constantly trying to just to keep them alive. I had no reserves. With
Y-
full party it was super easy.
yeah, that is one downside I'd say. Big downside of the Grimrock games in general is that there's a lot of options as far as character creation and party setup, but there's not really a lot of viable choices. Like you can play through the game with just two characters, but you're missing out on a lot of content, and the game's just kind of like artificially frustrating, as opposed to it being like a really discrete choice. Like you do get a little more XP to level them up faster, but it's not that much more.
I, I don't really think there's anything you need a full party for because like there's no party weight or like splitting the party. So you always have the same options. You just have the action economy is changed because you only have two pairs of hands instead of four.
Okay, but as a counterpoint, I need somebody to put all of these tattered cloaks on. I can't just throw them in a corner on the floor.
Uh, yeah, that's true, but like I don't think most of the loot in Grimrock is all that interesting.
Eh, that's probably true. I do like some of the things, like the fact that notes that you find can be used to weigh down pressure plates. So you wind up carrying around a lot of trash that you're like, oh, I'll just use this to hold down a pressure plate. But there's not nearly enough pressure plates in the game to occupy all of your garbage that you're going to find.
Yeah, does Grimmark actually simulate like the weight of items on the
Nope.
floor? So like,
No, there's just two types of pressure plates. There's ones that any item can hold down, and there's ones that only party members and characters can hold down.
yeah, so notes are just as good weights as something useful. So
Yeah,
like,
the only real difference as far as holding down pressure plates is some items can be thrown further. And so you might need like an actual throwing, like to throw a rock or a dart in order to land on a pressure plate, but otherwise, it just
but
like
if you
anything
need to
works.
save rocks for that, that just means every pressure plate you can actually reach easily, you weigh down with a note.
Right, right, and you need those rocks because you can use them in your sling.
Yeah, that's another innovation Grimrock ever did, but it's not really something they figured out, but it's like a technical thing. Just the au- automatical picking up of like fired ammunition is makes actually using missile weapons viable and not a huge pain.
Yeah, yeah, that is super nice. It's also interesting the way they handle it, where like uh some missile types stick into enemies and others just sort of hit them and land on the ground and you can pick them up immediately afterwards.
Yeah, I think Dungeon Master did that too. That some enemies like had arrows and so on stick to them, and some didn't. You just couldn't pick things from the enemy feed.
Right.
Like the square had to be empty for you to be able to pick things up from it.
Yeah. Yeah, the automatic ammo pickup thing reminds me of like the enhanced editions of the uh BioWare games where there's the quick loot tab that just shows
Yeah,
you all the items that are on the floor so you don't have to pixel hunt through all the piles of garbage.
yeah, that's like not really something that's like a big deal, but it's like a huge quality of life thing.
Yeah,
And like,
it's one of the things that makes like going back miserable.
yeah, and like I think pretty much everyone who played the BioWare games like Baldur's Gate and so on back in the day, that the moment it was possible, everyone installed like the infinite ammo stacks mod.
Right. Yeah. Forget having to install the expansion in order to get a quiver or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's like the base Baldur's Gate one didn't identify magic items by default. It was on the Baldur's Gate expansion that added like the blue outlines around magic items.
Right.
So yeah, so and like unidentified magic items showed only like as the base item type, so you had to like, so it was a huge pain before the first expansion.
Yeah. I remember. I played all that stuff at release.
Yeah, same though. I remember trying to like install the install both Baldur's Gate 2 and Diablo 2 on the same 2 GB hard drive, and it was a huge pain.
Yeah, I had basically the same problem with my first computer that also had like a 2 gigabit hard drive, and I had to install Baldur's Gate 2 on it, and I had to like almost like trim stuff out of Windows itself. Like my Windows installation was just a tiny bit too big to also put Baldur's Gate 2 on, so I had to like manually delete stuff.
Yeah, pretty much the same.
Yeah,
Like,
good times. It reminds me of my first computer upgrade ever was buying a video card off of eBay so that I could play Ultima 9.
And then you played Ultima 9, and it
And
was
my life was never the same.
yeah. I never actually finished Ultima 9 because like it came out during the weird period when I didn't have a proper computer, and by the time I got a proper computer, it was too obsolete to actually run on anything modern.
Yeah. Well, you can run it now. Have fun.
I have it on GOG, but I'm still working my way through Ultima 6.
Oh, well, I mean, once you get through Ultima 6, are you playing it on like the original version or are you doing the remake from the Dungeon Siege?
I'm doing it on the original because I tried to Dungeon Siege remake and it's way worse than the Ultima 5 Dungeon Siege remake.
Is it? I never played the 6 one. I played the 5, the one for 5, and I kind of enjoyed it.
The 5 has the advantage that Ultima 5 is just old enough that it's a huge improvement in like player comfort.
Right. Meanwhile,
Ultima
Ultima 6 actually still kind of looks good.
and Ultima 6 also has like the simplified controls that I don't use the entirety of the keyboard, just half of it.
Yeah, it's all contoured and shit. You could play it on a controller.
Well, I think the console version of Ultima 6 was like semi-faithful, unlike the SNES version of Ultima 7 that was like...
I don't remember the console versions.
I think for Ultima 7 the console version is like a single character action game or something like that.
Jesus.
Like they completely cut out the entire party and so on, and like baking bread and all the great stuff about 7.
How could they remove baking bread? You can bake bread in 9.
Yeah, I think like you can do pretty much. Ultima 7 is like still one of the best world simulation games, really.
Yeah.
It's even better than like the Gothic games where you can like fry meat, because in Ultima 7 you can stack crates.
I mean, in Ultima 9, you can stack a lot of shit.
I remember like playing Ultima 7 when I was like 9, and like didn't really. I still had like trouble reading English and so on.
Yeah.
So I didn't really engage with the plot. I was just stealing crates from the entire world and building my own house from them.
Oh man, yeah. Ultima was great. Ultima Online is one of those things that I really deeply wish I had been able to get into when it came out.
I didn't have like internet access until like 2006. Before that, it was all at school, so
Yeah.
it was also after my time.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of those things that like I have false nostalgia for.
I guess we should like get back to the Grimrock mod before.
I guess so. So I don't know how much of the stuff that's already ranked you've played before. I know you said you haven't actually played the Buck Rogers games, but you've played enough of the SSI games that the gold box games that I think you already know what Buck Rogers is all about and how it plays.
Yeah, I played like the Dragonlance gold box games last year, so I have an idea.
Yeah, and Buck Rogers is pretty typical gold box game all told, aside from the setting, which I think is really good, and the characters stuff. But yeah, as far as gameplay goes, it's all right. I think it's less annoying than some of the gold box games, just because there's a big focus on ranged attacks, and you actually have like some ability to do stuff like the environmental differences with like chaff grenades and stuff. But it's still like an old D&D. Uh,
Yeah, the combat is really basic, so
yeah.
it's not like so kind of like Grimrock.
Well, I would say Grimrock's more interesting because even though you do have the dance and all of the problems that comes with that, there's just more going on with the combat, even at its lowest point.
Yeah, like Grimrock actually works as a real-time combat because you're usually doing stuff constantly.
Yeah, and you have like actual equipment options, which like all the gold box games you kind of do, but it's really just you put something in someone's hands, and if they can use it, and it's it gives them the most damage output, then that's what they use. Whereas in Grimrock, like you're constantly swapping to like, oh, I need to have my hand open, or I need to swap to my wand to cast something, or oh shit, these guys heal when I hit them with lightning. I gotta swap out my lightning sword. And Buck Rogers definitely doesn't do that. You can change your equipment mid-combat, but it wastes a whole turn, and there's no real point.
Yeah, like in gold box games, the only reason to change equipment in combat was like to switching wands and so on.
Yeah.
Like never really changing weapons because you always use the highest plus weapon you had.
Right. And that's not entirely true of Grimrock. Like, obviously, you go for the high numbers, but there's other considerations, which I think helps it out.
You have the cooldowns to think about, and since you're controlling the entire party, it is another consideration for the cooldowns. Like, this weapon has a long cooldown, but I can do stuff with other characters.
Right. I can use that for when I get a big, opportunity for a big hit in, and then like I can use ranged on these other characters while we're moving around or whatever.
Yeah, and Grimrock actually keeps your mouse cursor in a pretty small area, so you can manage all the characters pretty easily.
Yeah, although I'm using a much bigger monitor now, so with the higher resolution, like it's way off in the corner, so I do misclick constantly now. I guess I could play it windowed, but
yeah, I guess that's actually the advantage the modern parts of Dungeon Master have, like the modded parts of Dungeon Master, where you can control the entirety of combat on keyboard.
Yeah, I've not played any of the modern stuff, like the new ports.
Oh no, they're like not. It's like an complete recreation, like someone reverse engineered it, so it's like just entirely the same thing. It just runs on Windows.
It's like Daggerfall Unity.
Yeah, something like that.
Mm.
But it has like support for custom dungeons and so on, and like it has like recording capabilities, so they use it for like running tournaments.
Oh, okay.
Like who can get to the dungeon fastest, because like it just records all the actions you take and so on.
Is there a big community for that, or is that like 3 people?
I think it's like 3 people. But it's a cool idea.
And I'm assuming the same is true of the custom dungeon element.
I think some people who made custom dungeons actually ported them to Grimrock.
Yeah. I actually, you know what? I think I have one of those downloaded.
Yeah, so download the Dungeon Master version and then compare them for 2023.
Oh, excellent. I've already getting my suggestions stream in. Yeah, so and I think I will put over Sifu 2 because the combat has a decent amount of impact, especially for like a dungeon crawler, right?
Yeah, like my suggestion was that it should be above Buck Rogers because like the dungeon is absolutely excellent and the combat is
passable.
That well, okay, passable, but there's like some memorable encounters. Like the big battle in the desert was actually it's like really cool moment.
Yeah, I love that when you teleport out and it's just like this giant. I don't remember if you can show up at night, which I think would dampen it, but you pop out of that dark dungeon and you're, immediately like out in the sun in the desert with like 1,000 zombies shuffling around.
Yeah, and there's like encounter like that in early Eye of the Beholder 2 when there's like the catacombs and like the story is that the monks are building an undead army.
Yeah.
There's like a huge room full of skeletons. And it's kind of like that, and it's like the same thing but on much larger scale because Grimrock has much better technology available.
Yeah. Yeah, so I will definitely put it above Buck Rogers. I'll put it over Sifu, because Sifu's main thing is just the impact of the combat's really good. But I think this is an overall much better game, even with its flaws. Hammer Fight is sort of in a similar spot, where it's got a lot of like little annoyances that drag it down, but not entirely. I don't know if you ever played Hammer Fight.
No, I haven't played any of the games that are on the first three spots, so I can't really advise you there.
Did you see Unsold? I mean, I know it was not sold to you.
Yeah, I was in the stream, but like I haven't played it, so I'm not sure if it does what it's trying to do better than Grimrock does what it's trying to do.
Honestly, I don't think so. And I'm kind of torn here on how much to weight this ranking as the base game versus the mod. Because the mod is mostly the base game.
Yeah,
Like, the
I
map's
think
not
it's-
any different. I mean, the map is different because they added areas to it.
like I think if the map's not that different, then you should weight the base game more because the map is the main attraction there. Really.
Yeah,
The combat and so on is like secondary.
right. I think this does go above Unsold. I really enjoyed Unsold, but it's just a weaker overall thing. It's pretty short, and as much as I liked it, there's not that many options to play through it, and I complained about the lack of options for party design and character creation, but you do have some in Grimrock. And,
Yeah, and
just the
there's mods that overhaul character creation again.
right, just the wealth of like user generated content really helps some games, and I think Grimrock 2, now that I'm getting into some of the user created stuff, I think that really pushes it over the edge.
Yeah, I think Grimrock 2 is like niche enough and inaccessible enough that anyone who gets into content creation for it is actually serious about it.
Yeah, well, for the most part. Some of those little ones still suck, but the big ones, like, there's a surprising number of total overhauls with completely new maps and new mechanics and stuff, and they're all of pretty good quality.
Yeah, because like Grimrock is like it is the best dungeon crawler since like 1988, so
Yeah,
and it's the best engine for it, and the base game is good, and it has pre-made editors that I guess is fairly user accessible.
yeah, I've not tried anything with it, but it seems like it's pretty easy to like crank out at least a dungeon layout with it. So, are you ever going to play the Magic of Grimrock mod, or are you gonna stick with overhauls that change the map?
I think I'll stick with the overhauls because I played the base game twice and it's really long. Like Dungeon
Yeah.
Master is pretty short. I can finish it in a weekend, so I
Right.
can replay it pretty easily. Grimrock 2 is big.
Yeah, I was definitely reminded just how big of a slog the base game is playing through it, because like some areas, I think it's the dungeon of Desmaru or something, Desaroon or something, off to the west of the like center, is
Yeah,
like
that
it's like 3 floors.
I think that particular dungeon is kind of the worst part of the game because there's not any really mm, interesting new tile set, and it's just all in the same dark dungeon.
Yeah,
Like I was when I first played, I was kind of disappointed that the castle and the end wasn't like more involved. But when I played it for the second time, it was a relief that it was just like one puzzle a floor.
right. Yeah, it's a lot more self-contained near the end. Well, so yeah, I would say you're probably uh, correct to stick with the big overhauls. But I did like Magic of Grimrock just for an excuse to play through the base game again.
Yeah, I played the base game twice. That's enough.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair enough. All right, well, we did it. I think we said enough about Grimrock. Now, let's talk about Wishlayer. We both played this at like the beginning of the year.
Yeah, it was like the first game I finished this year.
Yeah,
And it's partially because it's pretty small.
yeah, yeah. This is one of those like pretty like tight, self-contained. It's sort of like all a reference to like a certain sort of game like ZZT.
Yeah, I never actually played any ZZT games, but I know the aesthetics,
Yeah,
and so I figured out what's the reference to, but I have no actual comparison to what it's like compared to the originals it's trying to recreate. Eh,
I
but
think it
I
does a
like,
pretty good job of it.
yeah, but I like the game a lot. Like, it's not something that I'll play again. It's not something that I am crazy about, but it's like a solid game that does what it sets out to do, I think.
Well, what's interesting about it is that it's kind of a Metroidvania, right?
Well, yeah, you go around, pick up power ups, use them to uh, unlock more areas on the map. So yeah, it's a Metroidvania, and you
And it's a
increase your
roguelike
hearts.
because
I
if you die, you
Yeah,
restart start at the checkpoint, right?
yeah. And do you keep your upgrades though?
No,
I don't remember.
no.
Yeah, so if you don't keep your upgrades, it's not a roguelike.
So what I saw right there was the hockey game at the end, which is a major spoiler. Like the boss fights are basically turned into mini games, which is pretty cool.
Like, yeah, like when I like the game.
You've cut out. I lost you a little bit there. I still lost you. Maybe your internet's dying. I'll let you know when I hear you again. Yeah. I can hear you and my mic's on. Well, I don't know what you've done. Maybe you have to unplug it and plug it back in or something. Or maybe we can just refresh the Steam conversation. That might have timed out. What's up, Franken? Oi. Just waiting for Haffle to call me back for the rest of Wishlayer. We put Grimrock up at the top, as it is the best dungeon crawler since 1988.
Okay. Do you
Yep,
hear me now again?
I do, yeah.
Yes.
We were talking about the minigame boss fights.
Yeah, like when I first got to the end of the game, it was like a pretty big surprise. That's what the final boss was, but I think that's the thing I remember the most about the game because other than that, it's mostly just going around and collecting things.
Well, that reminded me a lot of Hero's Spirit, because Hero's Spirit also had like a really shocking final boss.
Yeah, it's not as good as Hero's Spirit, but it's still fun.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I think that holds out. That's true of like just the base game itself too. Like it's interesting, but it's not as good as like Hero's Spirit.
Yeah, like Hero's Spirit was like, I think one of my favorite games of last year. Like, I think it was like in the top three.
Yeah, yeah. Hero's Spirit is like the distilled essence of that era in my mind of like RPGs exploration stuff where
Yeah,
it's all really vague and it's vague in just the right ways.
yeah, like think I wouldn't have liked the Hero Spirit as much if it wasn't like just talking about it on Steam chat and sharing what we found.
Yeah.
But it's that, but that's like an experience we really don't get with games anymore. So that's part of why I like the Hero Spirit so much. Visualar is just a bit too short for that, and not difficult enough.
Yeah, yeah. Like it I never felt the urge to actually ask you anything about Wishlayer. Um which I know I did for oh, I was doing that for Archelos at the time.
Yeah, Arcros is like
Do I
I
ever get a
think
better magic staff? Where do I get a better magic staff, Apple?
yeah, that's something like that. And I think Arcros like also like one of my top games last year because I actually finished it last year. You waited until January.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I mean it's long enough that it genuinely I wasn't like dragging my feet on it or anything. It genuinely took me that long to get through it. I really enjoyed it. Um
It,
yeah.
yeah, but like Hero Spirit was one of my top games last year, and but Vishlar is like my benchmark for good game this year. Like if it's better than Vishlar, it's good. If it's worse than Vishlar, it's not really good and sometimes even bad.
Yeah.
Like it's the least good game I played this year, something like that.
Right. I I kind of feel the same way about it. Like it's not an amazing game that I feel the need to like recommend to everybody. But I think if anyone's like inclined towards it, I'd go, "Oh yeah, yeah, definitely try that out."
Yeah, it does exactly what it sets out to do, and but there's like nothing really like it's a the only thing special about it is like the ZZT gimmick.
Right. Well, and I think the mini boss or the mini game boss fights are an additional gimmick on top of that. Because
Yeah,
that's referencing the fact that all of the other games on the platforms that these types of games would be on would be like kind of dumb little mini games.
yeah, so that's true, but like there's like not enough special about visual art to make it like really great thing.
Yeah. How do you feel about putting it around Blob Quest? which is a blob type game. That was the NES game where you play as a blob, and it's also kind of a Metroidvania where you get new abilities as a blob.
I think I'd put it above it because like I don't really think that the Blob Quest is unique enough. I I don't think there's that many ZZT throwbacks.
It's
No,
fair.
and even less ZZT throwbacks that are actually good, I guess.
How would you feel about Wishlayer if it was free, though?
If it was free, it would be like even better. I can't really say I I I can't really rate Visual as a game to buy because I think you got it for me for Christmas last year.
I think so, yeah. It's $5. That's not bad.
Yeah, for $5, it's not bad.
And it's
Like that's
recommended by one friend of mine, who's also
and
the only friend who owns the game.
yeah, I wrote a review for it, just a short one, just like it's cool because I think the dev deserves to have reviews.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the most irritating things, just as an aside, about Steam as a platform is the way they gate the review thresholds. I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can't get very positive or mostly positive or overwhelmingly positive if you only have a couple reviews, even if they're all perfect 100% positive. You need, I think it's 50 reviews to get to be able to have very positive. You need, I think, 500 to get mostly positive, and I think it's like 5,000 reviews total to get overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, I knew they gated before they like show up the ratio, but I didn't know the exact numbers and like and I guess if you don't reach that ratio, you don't get recommended to people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like the game enough to write like one two lines to like say it's cool because like it is cool, and I think games like this should like it would be cool if more games like this got made.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. How do you feel about it compared to this Starry Midnight remake? Did you play that?
I didn't play it, but I saw your stream for it, and their stream made me interested enough in it that I kind of want to try it. So at this point, I think Wishland is somewhere around this point because, yeah, like I wouldn't put it too high, but it should be like at least in the middle of the games you play this year.
I'm gonna put it above this Starry Midnight remake just because it is more unique, I think. And I'm gonna put it below Night's End just because, like you said, like, you want this dev to do well and do more stuff, and you want more stuff like this. But I desperately want more from Pugware and more games like the Scoutfold series.
Yeah, like I think that's pretty fair rating for Wishland because
It's like dead in the middle. Not completely in the middle, but pretty close.
yeah,
I do have
said,
some real crap down at the bottom here.
like I said, Wishland was like I started my ranking of games for this year like the moment I started like making a list of what I played.
Yeah.
So like Wishlar was the first game I played, so it was like the benchmark, and
Right.
it stayed like around the middle the entire time because like it's good, but like not overwhelmingly good.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So, Wishlayer's there. Did you want to talk about Arhelos? Because, I mean, you don't have to have played it this year. And I don't know if you have to go to bed soon.
No, I don't work tomorrow and so on, but I kind of would like to take a pause to like drink something
Oh,
because
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I think we've been talking for a while.
We've been talking for almost 2 hours. Well, I've been talking for almost 2 hours. I think you've been talking for like an hour and a half because I did a few while your internet straightened up. So yeah, we can wrap this up now, and I'll put you on a tenuous reserve for this.
Yeah, I'm going out with friends tomorrow that I haven't seen for like a year, so but they are like have families and work, so like I don't think it will be too long.
Okay. Yeah,
But like,
maybe tomorrow we can do Arhulos.
yeah, I'll be down for Arclos tomorrow.
And there's nothing else on here that you played, right?
I played Elden Ring, but that's reserved, and I don't think I have that much to say about it.
You don't want to butt in on Iain's episode?
Well, I think like talking about 2 or 3 games is more than enough.
You can just like slide into half of them. Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I'm gonna be talking about all of them, so.
Like if you finish Lunacid before the end of the year, I can talk about it, but
I did finish Lunacid, but I'm not gonna write it up or consider it eligible for like what
yeah,
I
it's
do.
still early access.
Yeah.
Still early access.
Well, and it's early access to the point where I think they're gonna add a lot more, or I hope they add a lot more to it.
Yeah, like I liked it a lot because it was like I pirated it. It was enough to make me buy it. I finished it once, the early access, and then immediately started it again. So like I really liked it, but it's not finished.
I felt the same way about it, at least what I played of it. I felt the same way about it as like Grimrock compared to Dungeon Master, where like nobody's ever gonna make a Kingsfield game again, except someone did.
Yeah, someone did, and it's like some non-binary weirdo.
Right. But that's fine, because the character designs are like weird enough to be hilarious.
Yeah, like I think it's fine to have like a Kingsfield with a cute demon girl.
Yeah. Alright, well, I'm gonna wrap this up, go eat lunch. So thank you for joining me.
It was my pleasure. It was like a lot of fun talking about these games.
Yeah, definitely. Alright, well, I'll talk to you later.
See ya.
Later.
Or hear ya.
Hear ya. Bye-bye. And that's it. We've gotten, let's see, 60, not quite halfway through, huh? Probably about a third. Pretty good progress, though. I think we do have a pretty good benchmark here. And we have a new top ranking, which I think it pretty much deserves. Have to unmute the stream again. Well, not for long, because I am gonna go get lunch, actually. Yeah, I was just saying we have a good new benchmark, I think, and a new deserving top ranking. As much as I loved Unsouled and was kind of sad that no one else picked up on it and really want to promote it, I do think Grimrock's better. Even with overhauls that don't fix everything, I still think it's just like a fun playthrough with a lot of content. And it's assumedly only going to get better, like, because like I said, the Living Rock trilogy just had its third map pack put out a couple months ago, so people are still actively working on that. So who knows? I mean, we could see the best dungeon crawler ever as a Grimrock mod. I wouldn't be terribly surprised, because it's kind of a slim field. But I don't think many people are making Grimrock maps? Well, I think it's sort of like Drawd, where there's enough of a community making them and playing them that it's sort of self-sustaining outside of what's actually popular. So I think the only thing that'll like end Grimrock maps is enough of the creators dying off, which is gonna happen eventually, but probably not right away. Now, I'm gonna call it and stop the stream. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Halfwhole, again for showing up. I'll see you guys later.